Hello everyone, it's the Metal Geek. How y'all doing? So, if you tuned into the last couple of videos that I've put up, you know I'm kind of putting up these more candid, casual type of videos, almost like a podcast, but not entirely a podcast. It's not going to be live or anything like that. They're pre-recorded, and there will be some editing, but probably less editing than my other videos. And the whole point of that is for me to talk about things that interest me, and hopefully, that interests you, and we could talk about it below in the comments. But it's also just so I can get more content out there, because my other content is edit heavy, and it takes a while to edit videos, especially when you're doing multiple cameras or multiple angles, and you're kind of doing more of a cinematic thing. So I kind of wanted to put up something that's still fun, but a little bit easier to get out. So, in any case, if you checked out my last video, it was talking about whether collecting toys as an adult makes you childish or juvenile. And, of course, my opinion is no, it doesn't. It's a hobby like anything else, and if it makes you happy and it helps you get through a very tough adult life, what's wrong with it? Well, I was also talking about some of the things that I've collected. As you can see behind me is a little bit of the toy collection that I have. In that video, I also brought up that I have some WWE Championship collector belts. And since then, I got another one. Yeah, the IC Championship belt. And even though this has nothing to do with actually collecting toys, I'm going to wear this for the video anyway. So what am I going to be talking about today? Well, guys, this one is actually very important to me. I am going to be talking about cross-generation video game play. And that's a subject that I think is more important now than it has ever been in the history of video games. And this is going to be me discussing why. So here's the case, guys. I've noticed that this generation there's a lot of gamers, and I don't know if it's a younger generation or if it's just gamers in general that have gotten used to games kind of evolving to the point where they get better and better and better and better so quickly each generation that they now believe that everything has to change and become obsolete the second a new device comes out. And that's not just video games in general, but that's with any electronic device. And it's never been more prevalent than what I've been seeing, at least lately, with cross-generation gaming, especially with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, now that we have the Xbox Series X and Series S, as well as the PlayStation 5 out. At least from my perspective, I've seemed to have noticed that a lot of people really want the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 to just become obsolete, just go away. Like, it was never there, and it shouldn't be there, and it's holding gaming back because companies can't recognize their full potential with their games. And I don't think that's true at all. And I think cross-generation gaming has always been an important thing when it comes to generation transitions. And I think it's even more important now than it has ever been, as I said before. And this is the reason why. PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, there is a technology gap, of course. But big but. The generation gap between a PlayStation 4 and a PlayStation 5 is nowhere near the kind of generation gap there was, say, with the original NES and the Super NES. There was a big tech difference. I mean, it was not like a small leap. There was a huge leap in the power of the systems and what they were capable of doing. Same when it came to like the SNES to the N64. The N64 ushered in 3D gaming. It wasn't like it was a small thing. And of course 3D gaming did exist prior, even on the Super Nintendo with Star Fox, of course. But Nintendo 64 changed the landscape. The controller, everything. And that was a huge technology gap. So yeah, it kind of made sense that games that came out on the Nintendo 64 probably shouldn't come out on the Super Nintendo. And I'm sure if I did my research, because off the top of my head I can't think of any, but if I did my research, I'm sure there are games that came out on the Nintendo 64 that may have also came out on the Super Nintendo. But if they didn't, you understood it. However, that did not stop certain things, like I brought up Nintendo and Super Nintendo. There were games that came out on the Super Nintendo that also came out on the original NES. Yeah, they were not as quote-unquote good, at least on a graphics level, not necessarily in how it played, but they existed. And the reason why they existed is because whenever you launch a new console, it's expensive. Even if you're established in the gaming community like Nintendo or Sony, it costs money to launch a new system, and you're going to lose money for a while. And if your company is worth enough, you can stave off financial disaster, until you make a profit. Or if you're Microsoft and you're worth like trillions of dollars and $1 billion is like throwing a penny into a water fountain for making a wish, But in most cases, you can't do that. A company needs to be able to finance their consoles. So generally what that means is that when a new generation comes into play, moving from Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64 or, PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, is that the reason why the previous console doesn't go away right off the bat, and there are games still being made for it and there's still support for it, is because profitability. You need to make a profit, and you're going to be making that profit off from the software sales from the prior console. So that means if those systems just go away and pretend they never existed, that's money that doesn't go into the pocket of the company that needs it in order to fund making new games and fund the production of the new console. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of gamers today have forgotten that. Again, I'm not going to sit here and go, hey, it's the younger generation, because there could be plenty of us old folk that's been around for a while who are doing the same thing and have just gotten so used to technology like changing so rapidly. But there seems to be this impatience of wanting to get rid of an older console. I see a lot of people that have bought PlayStation 5s that are like, they should be making games only for PlayStation 5. Why are they releasing God of War Ragnarok on the PlayStation 4? It's holding it back. First and foremost, it's not going to hold it back if the company is actually smart enough to work around both systems. And you can say, well, isn't that holding it back anyway? Well, no. If a company puts the time and effort into their newer generation version of their game, they could easily take advantage of all the perks of the newer system and still give those who have the older system an experience. We've already seen it. Miles Morales. It's out for both the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. And the PlayStation 5 version has like all those perks. It has 60 FPS. It has 4K. It has ray tracing. It has a graphics fidelity mode. It has a performance mode. And those are not on the PlayStation 4 version of the game. And the PlayStation 4 version of the game has load times and load screens that are not in the PlayStation 5 version. It doesn't detract from the PlayStation 4 version. It's pretty much the same game. And because the graphics differences between the consoles are negligible at best these days, we have to start thinking about not only the longevity of gaming culture, which is a subject for an entirely different video, and I will cover that. But we also have to understand that we think these companies are billion-dollar companies, which they are, but that they can afford to just produce these consoles with no money coming in. Guys, if you want to see the PlayStation 5 fail because they don't have the money to produce it, that's up to you. But I want to see it succeed. Even if I don't have a PlayStation 5 right now, I want there to be a PlayStation 5 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, for anyone who wants to buy it. But that's not going to happen if Sony can't afford the production. And right now, we are sitting in a semiconductor shortage, which is causing a worldwide chip shortage crisis. So PlayStation 5s are hard to produce. And that is true of Xbox Series X. It's true of the Series S. It's true of the Switch. It is true of cell phones. It's true of cars. Anything right now that needs a chip to run is being affected by this worldwide chip shortage crisis. And Sony was smart enough to realize that, and they have decided that cross-generation gaming, producing games for the PlayStation 4 as well as the 5, is the only way they're going to be able to make the profit that they need to continue producing on the level that they are. And that is what a lot of gamers are not seeing. Artistically, I get it. People want the consoles to move on so that these companies can make the best games they can possibly make. And reality, and I'm not a PC master race person, as they like to call themselves. I'm a console gamer first and always will be. But if you want to make the best game without limitations, you would be making it for the PC, not for the PlayStation 5. Which, yes, is a powerful system, but it still doesn't hold a candle to what PC gaming could do right now. If you really want to make the game to the best of its abilities, you would be producing exclusively for the PC. So why even argue that you should only be exclusively producing for the PlayStation 5 and not the 4 because of power? Because again, the argument that if a company really wants to make the best game they could possibly make, they would be making games exclusively for the most powerful device there is to make it for. But they're not doing it for just that reason. It's not just an art. It is an art, but it's not just an art. It's a business. And they need to make money. And if that means that God of War Ragnarok and Gran Turismo 7 and Horizon Forbidden West and a load of other PlayStation 5 games have to be on the PlayStation 4 too. One, that's great for the business because it gets the game into the hands of more gamers. And two, it's consumer friendly because it gives gamers who don't have the current gen systems the ability to play the games in some fashion. This isn't Nintendo versus Super Nintendo. The graphics and the power and all of that, the technological differences, the gap in technology between the PlayStation 4 and 5 is not what the gap was back 20, 30 years ago when they launched a new console generation, were huge leaps in technology because they were huge. And when it was cross-gaming, when they did have cross-gaming, they had to have multiple development teams working on these. One for the new gen system, one for the old gen system, but they still did it. So why can't they do it now? I mean, if you're arguing that ray tracing makes gaming better, it makes it prettier. I love games that have great graphics, but I also love games just because I love video games. But I'm fine with Pac-Man. It's a fun game. We have to stop with the technology, guys. And I'm not saying stop moving forward in technology. I just mean we have to stop using it as an excuse. How good a game is not based off the technology. It's based on utilizing the technology you have to make an experience that is worth playing. And if God of War can play on both systems and have holographic fidelity on PlayStation 5 and also have really good graphics on the PlayStation 4, but maybe not as high as a frame rate or 4K or ray tracing, there's no reason why you shouldn't make the game for both systems. It's good business. Because God of War, Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, all these other games that are cross-generation, Halo Infinite on the Xbox systems. The reality is that the PlayStation 4 versions of these games are probably going to sell more copies, at least initially, because there's just more people who have those systems. PlayStation 4 has 116 million users worldwide as of right now. 116 million. PlayStation 5 has about 10 million. That's over 10 times the amount of gamers. And the PlayStation 5 is also experiencing a scalping problem, which means that of those 10 million, quite a few of them are in the hands of scalpers and not in the hands of gamers. That hurts software sales. Business. You gotta understand the business. It's not just about the art. It's not just about the games. It's all important. But if a company cannot financially afford to move forward, then they can't make the games you want to play. And that's the simple reality of it. Guys, the reason why cross-gen gaming is more important than ever again is because the technology gaps between generations is not big enough at this point to deny the later generation, the previous generation, from being able to play those games. Also, because of the chip shortage and the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and all of that having a problem with, stock because of the microchip shortages and not being able to get enough consoles out to gamers, denying these experiences to people playing on the previous generation is just bad business. You do not want to alienate your core user base. So if there's 116 million people playing on the PlayStation 4, you want those 116 million people to buy the PlayStation 5. And if you basically say, we're not giving you any of the experiences and you're just going to have to buck it up and wait while it takes us 2 to 3 years to get our user base up on the PlayStation 5 and the shortages to be dealt with, you're basically telling your gamers to go f*** themselves. And you don't want to do that. It's bad business. So, guys, that is why cross-gen gaming is important. There's one, again, if you want to make a great game, it's not going to be held back by the PlayStation 4. So, we have to stop making excuses. If you're a gamer, you're in it for playing games. You're not in it to say, I got the best console on the market and the best graphics this and the best graphics that. And I understand that frames per second can actually affect how a game plays. But it's not going to be in every case. There's plenty of games that don't need to run at 60 FPS in order to run and play fine. That's more of a visual fidelity thing when it comes to certain games. But we also have to understand that cross-generation gaming is an important part of gaming, and it always has been and always will be. But this is just my take, guys. You can completely disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. As I say in all my videos, I will not be offended if you thumbs down my videos. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell. This is the Metal Geek saying, have a great one.